And welcome back to the Masters of Modern MMcast podcast. I am your host, Alex Kessler, here with a very special co-host, Rebell. Welcome to the MMcast for the first time. How are you?
I'm good. I was trying to think if it was my first time. It is, though. It is.
Yes,
It's
you've been on the
honor to be
stream.
here.
We've done games of Commander, but now we're talking Modern, which is really what life's about. Maybe that's
surprising.
But hello everyone, and if this is your first time here, we're a Magic the Gathering podcast, mostly focused on content about all things Magic, though with always the lens of the format Modern. And today, when we get into it, we will be we're gonna talk Grinding Station. We're gonna talk Underworld Breach. I'm gonna say through the breach like at least 12 times throughout the episode. But anytime I say that, it's Underworld Breach. We'll keep track. Maybe there'll be a counter somewhere that the editors, Rick or Marshall, will put in. And maybe if people want to play a drinking game at home, feel free. If you're under the age of 21, enjoy the Martinelli's apple cider and otherwise have fun. All right. So, but before we do, really quick shout out to all of our sponsors. First on Channel Fireball and TCG Player. Thank you so much for being the home of the MMcast. And if you are looking to buy any cards, there's a link below for our TCG Player affiliate link. If you click on that, you go to the TCG Player website. It'll just remember we sent you, and they help us out. So help us, help them, help you. Any of the cards we talk, if you want to talk about buying Grinding Station or all this stuff, that is the place to buy it. And then beyond that, check out altersleeves.com. There are some technical issues with the website right now, but they are still one of the sponsors of the podcast. And we once they're back up and running, which we're really excited about, where there's a bunch of cool stuff happening there. And if you're a patron, you get cool Alter Sleeves once their site is back up and running. There's a cool lightning bolt one with me and Ben that will be being thrown your way shortly. And last, before getting started, Rebell, where let everyone know who you are. Where do you come from? What is your magic vibe?
my magic vibe. Hello, everyone. I'm Rebell. I come from the internet. I'm made of code and data. I'm an AI. You can find me on YouTube, I think, and also Twitter. Yeah, I think that's the main two places. I technically have an Instagram too, but I don't think you need to go there. There's nothing special there. My magic vibe is usually playing CEDH or Commander, but I have been playing a lot of Modern lately, and also Legacy and pre-Modern, kind of everything. But I used to actually play Modern before playing Commander. I escaped Modern with Commander, and now we're back again. You can never truly escape.
A betrayal. The betrayal that I think some of our followers sometimes feel whenever we talk about Commander, like last week. But yeah, and you know, something that we're really excited by. Are you going to Philly?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Philly's coming up in 4 weeks. I've been ramping up, building multiple Modern decks ready to take there at MTG Summit. I got to jam a bunch of Modern, and it was a blast. Just firing off games. So I wanted more things to try out, and I realized that the Grinding Station deck, I opened up 3 Mox Ambers out of the Brothers War packs that I opened. And I was like, oh, I guess these are the only cards I didn't own out of the Grinding Station deck. I bought some redundant copies. I guess I only owned one Expressive Iteration as well, so I did have to buy a playset of those. But
what a shame.
I know. I do. I need that? Absolutely. And then I did just buy just more Scalding Tarns. They're only like $15.
They're so cheap right now. It's so weird because we probably lived through the same time period where Scalding Tarn was like $90 plus or whatever a pop, and now they're like $15, and like Windswept Heath is like 40 or something. I don't know. I might be making that up. That's
no. All of the
old ones are expensive.
The ones and the old ones are expensive, and all the enemy ones. I just keep like building Commander decks in these and Modern decks, and I just I'm like, I could like dig through 30 different Commander decks that don't need to play off color fetches and like try and put together this deck, or I can spend $30 and buy a play set of Arid Mesas, an additional play set of Arid Mesas.
Yeah. and I'm sure you're going to get rewarded for all those Arid Mesas at some point anyways.
It's like it has historically been such a no-brainer investment to just buy fetch lands that I can't imagine it being wrong now.
Yeah, I don't think there's any level of reprinting like aside from a ban, like a hard ban on all fetches in modern, which
Right.
wouldn't make sense. That fetches is just a bad idea.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, it's one of the like weird things with the Modern Horizons 2 stuff, right? Where like the format is collectively more expensive because of elementals and ragavans, but at the
Yeah,
same time, fetch lands are so inexpensive that like the actual barrier to entry to modern historically is no longer the barrier to entry.
yeah. You're at least you're able to play high color and resolve spells. The
Yeah.
quality of spells depends on your wallet, but
Yes.
at
Yes.
least you're able to play, right? Which is not that bad. It used to be the other way around where you just don't even get to play. So,
That you can have cool spells, but good luck on getting a mana
yeah.
base out there. But yeah, and I know you've had experience playing a lot of Grinding Station in the past.
Yes.
I have some thoughts on kind of its historic prevalence. So I wanted to talk about it. So really quickly, can you explain what Grinding Station is as a deck in Modern?
Yeah, so Underworld Breach Grinding Station is a really, really interesting modern deck because, well, actually, I think a lot of people would say that it's the best modern deck in the meta right now. However, it's held back by how difficult it is to pilot very, very well, which I would agree with. I don't know like 100% if it's the best deck, but I can attest to how difficult it is to pilot. And we can talk about that in a little bit. But it's an interesting combination of a combo deck, but with the ability to play more tempo with having cards like Ledger Shredder and Ragavan, which is kind of important because you're sometimes able to mask like what your game one is depending on what your hand is. You probably don't really want that hand though, but you're able to like hide a little bit of who you are, so then your opponent could play around you inappropriately, and then suddenly you play Underworld Breach and Grinding Station, and then together with Grinding Station, you're able to sacrifice a zero cost artifact like Mox Amber, and then go through your deck and replay it until you can hit your win con, which is either Grape Shot, but I think most people play fast as Oracle.
And to kind of to explain the basic way the combo works, or what the two things. So through the breach is,
Underworld
or
Breach
sorry,
there. Bing, that's
damn,
one. Got him.
there's one. Underworld Breach is one in the red for an enchantment. Each non-land card in your graveyard has escape. The escape cost is equal to the card's mana cost plus exile 3 other cards from your graveyard. So basically, you can cast it for its converted mana cost, or no, for just its mana cost, and then
Yes.
you have to exile 3 additional cards from your graveyard. But it doesn't. Key features that are different than stuff like Yawgmoth's will is it does not exile those things. It exiles the cards
Yep.
you exile, but the card itself sticks around. And so then that paired with Grinding Station, which is the 2 mana artifact that you can tap it, sacrifice an artifact, target player puts the top 3 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. Whenever an artifact comes into play, you may untap Grinding Station. So you sacrifice any of the zero cost artifacts in the deck, being it Mox Amber or Mishra's Bauble, or some of the sideboard cards, and it then mill 3 cards, mill your own 3 cards. You can then use those 3 cards you milled to
Keep going.
uh, replay the artifact, and then basically go through your whole deck, milling your whole deck using Underworld Breach. And then thus Oracle wins the game once you have no cards in your library. Normally, you're able to generate extra mana using the Mox Amber if you're using it that way, and then the additional cards you're putting. You want to have, right? You want to have 3 extra cards to be able to win with Thassa's Oracle. If you mill Thassa's Oracle,
Well, yeah,
no,
you need more cards in the graveyard to ultimately stop on Nessus Oracle.
because you just move into Thassa's Oracle instead of Mox Amber, right? The
Yeah,
last
yeah,
thing
yeah.
you
At the
do is
very
just,
end, you do that.
yeah,
Yeah.
you just use the 3 cards from the Mox Amber instead of casting Mox Amber. You cast Thassa's Oracle, so you don't need that much more. But yeah, so you need at least one other card in your graveyard above the necessary 3, so that you don't have to exile Thassa's or we could. Never mind, I'm shutting up. This all works. As you're all realizing, I am new to this deck. But one of the things that really kind of excited me is what you mentioned before, which is that it does play this tempo game plan with a combo backup plan. And to me, that type of deck has existed in modern for a long time, right? The idea of like combo deck meets other strategy. And this kind of is this weird perfect marriage of Birthing Pod and Splinter Twin in both of their heydays, where it's a little Birthing Poddy because it's not as control tempo-y as Splinter Twin was, but then it does have kind of the like, here's 3 Pokemon cards that don't mean anything, but they do mean you win the game if you draw them correctly.
Yeah, I think you just create the best tagline ever for Breach combo, which is it's the marriage of Birthing Pod and Splinter Twin. I think everyone who quit Modern before Modern Horizons 1 would hear that and be like, "What? I want to play this deck now."
That's why as soon as I got the Mox Hammer, I was like, wait, this is the deck I wanted to play. Because like you have the Splinter Twin gameplay plan of like, I play a 1-drop and a 2-drop creature, and they're going to beat you down, and you can't deal with it directly because if you do, you're afraid that, I could just win at your end step if you
Yes.
tap out. And then it has kind of the Birthing Pod plan where you do get to play a little bit more of a grindier play pattern. And then you also don't know which pieces you shouldn't remove, because if you remove the wrong one, I can just tutor up the hate card you need, or I'm just going to be able to sacrifice my way to value in a way that you weren't prepared to. And still, at any moment, I can play 2 Pokemon cards or Yu-Gi-Oh cards that say win the game on them. Don't do anything else.
I think theoretically, and I haven't had like enough games as the Breach player or enough reps to like confidently say this, but you can oftentimes like have, let's say, a grinding station in play, but your whole plan was really to play tempo. But that grinding station's so intimidating, you just force them to like make them have it and remove your grinding station, and you like stick another threat afterwards, and they're like, oh dang, I needed to deal with that instead.
Yeah, they
So
like tap out on their turn 3. You're on the play. You play Ledger Shredder, Grinding Station, and you now have the like a thick Ledger Shredder that you're beating them down with. But then that Grinding Station's there. So
yep.
what do I deal with? And then just
Yeah,
the Ledger
the
Shredder kills them
feint
as a 5/6 flyer,
Yeah,
five
the
seven
feint
flyer.
of the grinding station is very strong, and also you have Urza Saga, so like that's another really good threat where you're able to stake like a construct, and then find like a shadow spear and stick it on that, or you use the Urza Saga to find yourself the 0 rock you needed, which is Mox Amber or something. So there's like when I picked up this deck and I play tested it. I play tested just one night against like a friend. Like I played like 10 games or something. When I first touched like this deck, I was like, oh my god, there's so many decisions to make with like your mulligan, and every piece, like every card you have in your hand can accommodate so many different plans that like it's almost overwhelming to like try and figure out what is the right line to take here, given like depending on your matchup.
Well, and that was always the thing with Birthing Pod, right? Like Birthing Pod was probably the best deck in Modern when Modern was created, and had never not been the best deck in Modern until it was banned, except for the fact that it was so hard to play and so hard to figure out what is actually the optimal list for this, that no one figured it out until 3 years later, when then everyone's like, the people that were good at Pod got and were also good Magic players became the same people, and then they were just like, oh, we are masters at this deck, and now we're just putting up consistent numbers at every tournament we ever play in, because once you know all of the decision paths you're supposed to make, the deck is unbeatable. But knowing all of them takes thousands of games of reps, knowing every matchup you're playing against. The difficulty level is really high, which is my favorite type of deck.
Yeah,
As much as it's bad for my ability to not go to time in events.
we have the same taste where I have a friend who I play Modern with, and he doesn't really like complex decks. He just likes the idea of something being very punishing is like not something he's interested in. But for me, it's like, oh, tell me more.
Right.
How tell me all the ways this deck can punish me and make me feel dumb. I want to play this deck.
I don't know what it, and maybe it's just like I want myself to be punished, but I would much rather lose games knowing that it was my fault that I lost than lose games that felt unwinnable. Right.
Right.
Like going into like every tournament as like Jund and playing against like 3 Tron matches sounds so much more miserable than me playing this deck and just like, oh, I punted and I sacrificed the wrong thing at the wrong time, or I attacked when I should have blocked or whatever to get to that whatever point. And yeah, it definitely is. My goal as much as possible is to feel dumb. Yes.
It's
Than helpless.
it's really interesting. I don't want to like scare people off from playing this deck, because it's not so much that it's intimidating, but it's just once you pick it up, you see there's so much potential that it's hard to immediately pick the line you want to go for. And some of the lines for this deck is somewhat higher risk than like other decks have, which I think would be like the last 10 or 15% of skill required to really master this deck, which is understanding when to take a very risky line,
Mhm.
because that is like your best out to this match. I was playing this really cool deck in Legacy. It's Sam Murphy designed this deck called Doomsday Tempo, where it's Doomsday plus Murktide. And if you pick either plan. The deck can support either plan very well, and then it's essentially the exact same thing, right? Your Doomsday is your Breach, and your Murktide is your Ledger Shredder, right? And depending on your match, depending on your hand, you pick the game plan, and then like if they stop your tempo, you slam down the Doomsday, or you turb out the Doomsday, but turns out your pile was tempo to kill them with like a really fast clock somehow,
Right,
or something
right.
like that. So I actually had like very similar decks that required very similar skills, and it's very very satisfying to play. And it's recognizing like sometimes you're just gonna have to like realize your best out here is actually just to take a super risky turn one Doomsday and hope they don't have it, right? Or
Well,
whatever.
and in this deck, I mean, that's kind of the power of Underworld Breach, right? Where it's like,
Yes.
if you have Underworld Breach in your hand, sometimes Underworld Breach with Grinding Station wins you the game. Sometimes you just have the right cards where you get to like cast 3 Mishra's Baubles in a row and just use it as a 2-mana draw 3 cards, or use it to like use your Aether Spellbound and bounce 4 permanents, or use it to use your Aether Spellbound to bounce your Emery to then replay your Emery to then mill into the Grinding Station that you then need to be able, there's so many different lines you can take just with just the words on every card being kind of draw 3 cards, but put them into your
Emery
graveyard.
is such a broken like this when you play Emery with this deck, Emery feels so broken. The very first hand I kept on the Underworld on this deck was like I think it was I don't know, Steam Vents, and then 3 artifacts, one of them being a Mox Amber. And then I think I slammed down a turn one Emery and like somehow also had mana for a Ragavan. I don't think that's possible.
No, yeah, it is. You Steam Vents, Mishra's Bobble,
No,
Mox Amber. You play Emery off on the Steam Vents. That turns the Mox Amber into a thing that can then cast.
gives you blue. I can't play Ragavan. So, anyways, the idea is just like you're still able to like just drop all your rocks, drop all your like play a lot of
Oh
things.
yeah, yeah, you're
Play
right.
Emery, flip over more cards in your graveyard. Now Emery lets you replay Mishra's Bauble and draw
Yeah,
more
yeah, yeah.
cards. It's just nutso, uh, which is really really cool when you have it. So this is like actually a really important learning for me in regards to this deck is
Yeah.
I found that I play blue white Ren 6
Mhm.
in modern, so like learning how to manage my colors has been like a thing that I've been practicing a lot, and on this deck to me feels much more difficult to manage colors than blue white Ren 6 actually, because uh, when you try to go for it, it's so important that you have the right colors when you're trying to go for it. Like, let's say you have the Underworld Breach line, right? You've set that up, and you have the Mox Amber, but your only way to generate color was you only have a Ragavan in play, right? Um, how do you hit your Thassa's Oracle if you can't make blue?
Right. Sure. Oh,
Like,
oh, oh. Fair. Yeah, yeah,
there,
yeah.
I have found that there are there are times where I actually have the combo, but I don't have the colors to support the combo.
Sure. You like
So
need Emery in play to be able to win with the Mox Amber, basically.
yeah, or maybe you need to have a Springleaf Drum or something like that to
Sure,
like
sure, sure.
you need to like sequence it in a way where you can hit the double blue, which I know Grape Shot is like not the preferred out here, but to me, like Grape Shot is somewhat interesting to me because it simplifies at least that part in the end of the line versus Thassa's Oracle.
It
But
is interesting that they don't play both, right? Because I guess when that's kind of the like question on what are some of the ways to kind of angle, shoot, or change the deck. Now it does feel pretty tight. It's not like there's a lot of empty space, but it's not like Grape Shot as a removal spell is the worst thing I've ever played.
yeah, that's what I was. that's what I was thinking myself too. But I trust the greater powers at hand, and they they believe in Thassa's Oracle, so I'm not gonna disagree with that
Well,
as a
yeah, I
person
think
who only played the deck one night.
I think what I would probably, if I was to mess around and find out, I think I would probably cut an Unholy Heat for a Grape Shot. Um, which like maybe wrecks you in the worst possible matchup you don't want to get wrecked in, but also like Grape Shot can kind of do a fake Unholy Heat impersonation if you really, really need it to on turn two.
That's true.
Uh, and then I mean, it doesn't do the 6 mana version of it, but I think that's not the most relevant for this deck sometimes. So I don't know. That would be my go-to. Well, I would not cut Thassa's Oracle for Grape Shot, but I would maybe have both if mana management is that difficult to pull off when you need to in the matchups that it's the most important. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just when you pick up this deck, the few things I'll pay attention to is like one of them is making sure you have the right colors and thinking and like planning ahead to make sure that you're ready for that, and then also uh like just knowing the line a little bit better. Like, did you know the grounding station triggers itself?
I did know that. That I knew.
Yeah, it's so unintuitive. That's like it's thankfully when I said I'm interested in Underworld Breach and Grinding Station, someone was like, "Oh, that's a pretty like a slightly complex sign." I'm like, "Don't worry, I play CDH. That's like what I do all the time."
Right, right.
So fortunately, I do have some experience of how to play Underworld Breach. But like just knowing that there's that's one untapped trigger, and if you have extra mana, you can actually like grind itself, or grind something, grind itself, so you see more cards and replay your grinding station.
Yep.
If you want to hit more cards, right? If you have like a surplus of mana, you just need just hit more things.
Mhm.
That's something to do. So like, there's a lot of like little things like that you can learn. But I think mana, like the line, and just like then knowing like kind of getting a good feel for when is it time to go on the beatdown, when is it time to just like survive and hit the breach, uh, is pretty important too.
Well, and like part of it also is like a lot of the cards are all very open ended, right? Like it's Ragavan both having both the ability to attack or dash. Do you cast the spells off of your opponent's thing? Do you cast the cards that you need to cast to further your game plan that aren't just the random things you got from your opponent? The fact that do you save your treasures for what we talked about just earlier, where it's like you need blue mana to cast Thassa's Oracle, and if you only have Ragavan, what do you do? Ledger Shredder, what do you discard? Like the decision trees just on a Ledger Shredder are intense. Emery,
Yes.
Emery, which is not just like the ability to like bounce Emery and or have it die to return it to be able to cast it off of it through the breach to draw more cards, but also
Dang, I got you again. That's two.
oh, oof, I probably would
It
have
was a
done it
fun
more.
game.
But like, there's a version of this deck that just like there are decks that can't beat Emery Aether Spellbomb.
Yeah.
Like that's an insane lockout for some decks that just won't be able to beat that. Not to mention like the Mishra Baubles fetch land game.
Yes.
And then Teferi Time Raveler can bounce your own permanents instead of bouncing one of their permanents. So you get to play that fun game. So like almost every card is its own little mini game of decision trees that you have to figure out. One thing I will say is I'm going to extend my deck metaphor at the beginning. Not only is this birthing pod meets Splinter Twin, it's the child of the marriage of birthing pod or Splinter Twin, but Affinity is also kind of the drunk uncle that hangs out.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Because like you're getting the mocks, you have the mocks in play. You're like your turns could be like here's 4 artifacts turn 1. You have the whole like Urza saga making a big creature to attack with the fact that you just haven't sacked, which is another layer of complication. Don't sack your Mishra's Baubles unless you need to, maybe because you have Urza saga in the deck. And then it has kind of the what you mentioned, which is do you go for the risky play and sack everything and risk it for the biscuit to go all in on a win condition, or do you play the grindier long-term game plan and not go for it, which Affinity had to deal with a lot of the time. Original Affinity was, do you do the wide strategy where you attack on the side and you keep your creatures alive and only sacrifice them to, do damage on a need to know basis in case they have a removal spell? Or do you just sack every artifact you have, put it all on Ornithopter and attack them for 15 in the air and hope your opponent doesn't have a lightning bolt? um,
Also, another really big really cool thing about this deck is that you have really, really good draws late game. Like there have been games where like I'm totally out of the game, but I'm never ever actually out of the game. Like if let's say I went for it until I got totally stopped, all I need to do is hit another under top deck another Underworld Breach, and we're in it again. So I think also the fact that your top decks are that live like adds more to the decision making, where it's like you can take a risky line and bet on the idea that like if I get stopped here, I might survive another couple more turns,
Mhm.
and I might be able to dig for that Underworld Breach and like attempt again. So yeah, it's like a super sweet deck.
Well, so other ideas. One was leaning more into one of the two options of either. I think it's already, especially if you look at the sideboard where it's playing Shadow Sphere, it's playing Pithing Needle, it's playing Termod Script. You have a little bit more of the like Birthing Pod Hate Bears, Artifact Hate Bears kind of deck strategy option to move into. But I was wondering if there has been versions of this deck that lean more into just here's a pile of counter magic or removal spells to just like be a actual tempo control deck that just like might win the way that Splinter Twin used to with Grinding Station Underworld Breach. And I know there was a few decks we picked out that were like, is it prowess decks that were playing Underworld Breach? But they're
Yeah,
doing it more for just like Underworld Breach is a heck of a card, and why did they print it?
yeah, I think it's really interesting to see a lot of lists, these like new lists coming out where they're just trying out like one or I think it's like two copies of Underworld Breach as like that late game finisher that you just slam down and like give you that little bit of reach that you needed to like close out a game, because modern does like you go through a lot of cards with your fetch lands and just playing spells like a lot. Like you usually just have a big graveyard, which is why Drown in the Lock is like a playable card here. And if a meta has like, or if your format is like Drown in the Lock is playable, then in general I assume Underworld Breach has enough fuel, right?
Right.
So it's been interesting to see like other decks that to do like adopting Underworld Breach in that role, like not combo at all. I think a really nice way I've seen it described is like Underworld Breach is either like double or triple lightning bolt, or it's like a treasure cruise where you hit another expressive iteration for 4 mana, which is quite like it's a little bit, but it's not nothing, right? Another expressive iteration is might be the thing you need.
I mean, yeah, I think like it also gives decks that are leaning into stuff like Murktide Regent like a game plan B, right? Where it's resistant to most of the removal other than maybe hard graveyard hate, like a Rest in Peace or something that keeps your graveyard empty. That the Murktide, like that a normal aggressive attack you in the air tempo deck is not going to be not. I forget how I started the sentence. Underworld Breach is good against the decks that are good against the tempo game plan, or at least it attacks it at a different axis that the hate cards against your tempo game plan would be answered by. You're like, oh, well, cool that you brought in good removal spells. Here's an enchantment that lets me lightning bolt you 6 times.
Yeah,
GG.
or even just like let's say we're not I don't think we're proposing to start slamming Underworld Breaches into your Murktide decks, but like let's say you do get you hit a point where you're slightly exhausted, where you exhausted your resources, and then you top deck an Underworld Breach, you play a Murktide and play like a Delver or something. I don't think you play Delver anymore, but like a Ledger Shredder, and you because you escape 3 cards, you go
Dragon
to the
Free Channeler.
Murktide, right?
Yeah.
Like the that one Underworld Breach just puts you right back into the game, right? Like it doesn't have to like end the game. I think the idea that like Underworld Breach has that utility and can get you back into a game is like very, very appealing for cards for decks that might want it.
It's kind of like the modern day Snapcaster Mage, right? Like why
Yeah,
play Snapcaster Mage when you can play Underworld Breach and get a Dragon Rage Channeler that then also lets you cast a Lightning Bolt that for 1 extra mana than you would have spent if you were Snapcaster Maging Lightning Bolting. And um, I definitely think there's a lot of really cool. It makes that just now a 1/1 again, but I
it's
still
not
think
that
the
bad.
deck. Yeah, I would take Dragon Rage Channeler and a Lightning Bolt in play for 4 mana
You
in the
also
late game of
trigger
most matchups.
Surveil.
Yeah, card's nuts. um, yeah, I think like Through the Breach allows you to do so many
Boom,
cool.
number 3.
Oh no, not Through the Breach.
Underworld Breach.
Underworld Breach allows you to like attack it. I mean, kind of what we mentioned earlier, right? With Grinding Station in its own, it lets you attack in so many different angles. It's such a great value card. Then applying that same logic to everywhere else. It's really similar to almost what happened with Death Shadow, where like for years, Death Shadow was a gimmick card that people were playing with. Not gimmick, that's mean to, but like was a like, I'm going in on getting my life total to 3 mana as soon as possible, and then giving this 10/10 1 mana double strike. That's what the deck is about. And then they banned Gitaxian Probe, and everyone's like, okay, I guess we'll try like playing with Thoughtseize, and oh well, the double strike isn't as good because I'm going down. I'm not able to like turbo out as low as life as I like use, um the 5 mana creature that cycles for life and Gitaxian Probe. So
Street
I'll
Wraith.
yeah, Street Wraith. So I, instead of me going deep on that game plan, instead of double strike, I'll just play like good removal spells. Like, oh, this is actually the best Delver in the variant in the format. It's not a gimmicky 10/10 that you give double strike. It's a 1 mana 5/5 to 8/8 that then you play removal spells to make sure it doesn't die.
Yeah.
Cool.
I have this DM from a friend a long time ago. He was like, "You want to see this really funny meme deck?" And it was a Death Shadow deck, and then like fast forward a couple months, Death Shadow was the thing.
Right.
Is
Ends up
this
just being
funny how decks kind of like evolve like that? They start off as these interesting memes or whatever. Turns out the meme is pretty good.
yeah. Well, and often what it is like there's a meme in the deck, but then if you take part of the meme out, that deck is actually good. Like there's the meme was working because there was a good deck supporting
Yeah.
it. And it's like, oh, Death Shadow is great. It's the double striking, gimmick that actually wasn't good. And in this case, it could just be that like, now, mind you, I think the Grinding Station game plan is that powerful that I don't think that's going to go away. But say they ban Grinding Station, like I think Underworld Breach said it correctly.
You did.
Underworld
I
Breach
noticed.
is like just a card that we're going to see showing up in more and more modern decks that have nothing to do with combo, just as a good value enchantment across the board.
I think so. I'm pretty excited to see like what kind of list we'll put up, like put results with it, because it's a cool card. Broken card. Super broken card.
Should they
But
have
very
printed this
cool.
card? Debatable.
Debatable.
It's
A
$21
cheaper.
now.
Oh wow. A cheaper Yogg's Will for 2 mana that also doesn't exile cards forever. Hmm.
That's also like an ETB on a thing that you can rebuy it, right? It's not exiled when it dies.
It
You can just
dies.
sacrifice
Like
it.
it doesn't exile. Yeah, you could
So you like,
theoretically.
well, that was the one like other cards that I thought for the Grinding Station deck. So yeah, there's the one conversation we kind of just got into, which is like, can you play this card as a tempo card? And then the other part of that conversation is like, does that deck just play a single Grinding Station and some of the other cards that deck plays anyways, with through the breach game plan A being go after people as a value card, and then just once in a while you're like, oh, I won because I have Grape Shot in my deck and Underworld Breach, and you just didn't expect me to win that way. Or like, is there enough pieces to make both sides work? It does rely on the 0 mana artifacts, specifically
Yeah,
Mox Amber.
it relies on Mox Amber a lot.
So like kind of the format just, well, I don't know. I guess it's like, is this deck as is just better going all in, or is it better opening up the shell? But then what do you take out? Because part of the thing is like expressive iteration is just like a dumb card also.
Yeah, I think it's like pretty tight already.
Yeah.
And all the other cards that you play that aren't part of the plan is also just like broken, right? Like Ragavan, it's just broken. So why would you not play
Well,
Ragavan?
and that's the game plan B that we're describing anyways.
Yeah,
Yeah, the other random cards, Hall of Heliod was one I was thinking, or isn't it's like longer,
I
right?
just
Isn't that
saw
kind of
that
like 18
Hall
words?
of Heliod that puts an enchantment back on top of your deck.
Yeah. Where like, so that way if Underworld, it allows you to use your Underworld Breach a little bit
That's
more
neat. Yeah,
proactively because you can rebuy it. That would be an interesting. And now the problem there, I think, is what you mentioned before, which is that this deck is so color hungry that because it's a colorless producing land, it's a little wonky.
yeah, but actually, oh, that's such a good piece of tech. I think when I was playing it like a month or two ago, it didn't have Hall of. I actually just noticed Hall of Heliod's played another list that wasn't a breach list. I think, but I never considered those two together. What's really neat about having those two cards together? Sorry, you got me really excited thinking about those two things together. God, I want to play on CDH now. Is why did no one think about this? Is because
Is
like
Hall of Heliod Breach not a thing in CDH? I thought that
no,
had.
no.
Oh,
It's because I've only ever the application CDH is that you play Intuition, and Intuition has Underworld Breach, Lion's Eye Diamond, Savine's Reclamation. So no matter what option you give them, you get your Underworld Breach back. But I've
yep.
never ever seen Hall of Heliod paired with Breach. And what I like about that is because you're actually able to not only fake out with an Underworld Breach to like bait counters, but also the really, really big part here is sometimes I'll actually use my grinding station as like a pseudo draw three, just to like trying to hit something I need. And I was thinking, man, I really wish there was a Savine's Reclamation in this deck, but we almost have that now. If you have a Hall of Heliod, that means you can aggressively grind yourself with the grinding station, and like or an Emery and not worry about it because you can just get it back.
And you're given the option there too to play stuff like now they're not as good with grinding station, they're better with Underworld Breach, but just any of the enchantments that let you sacrifice for free to do damage, they don't really work with the rest of the pile though. I was like trying to think if there's like none of the weapons let you sacrifice for free.
I think you probably just play you just play it for Breach. Maybe
Yeah.
Dress Down. I actually really like Dress Down as interaction.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I like Dress
And
Down
you
with it.
could Dress Down. I have another friend in my LGS. His signature move, and I can hear it whenever he says it. No matter where I am at the LGS, I can always hear him say it. Is he goes enter your end step, and then he flashes in a Dress Down because he'll have a 3 fairy, so it'll persist until his turn, and then he'll bounce it back to his hand. So that Dress Down drew him 2 cards.
Oh, that's so sick.
Yeah, I love Dress Down. So what could be viable here, and I don't know if they play Dress Down in Breach decks, is that at least having Dress Down means the Solid Tube won't hit your Emery, because the Emery just dies really, really fast all the time.
Sure. It's the
So
easiest target that doesn't feel bad killing it, and you kind of have to before they untap with it. Like Ragavan, you can block.
yeah,
Eventually, I'm like, oh,
so
I'll play this. Yeah,
that's cool. I'm just like theorizing so much right now. Game changer.
verbalize the theories.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I need to take another look at Breach list right now. I'm personally more interested in seeing like Underworld Breach and just other tempo lists that aren't combo based, because my experience playing the deck, and I know my other friends have experienced something similar as well, and we just attribute it to how dumb we are. Is a lot of times Underworld Breach feels like this, or this deck feels like this, where you have uh, a piece from both game plans, and then there's so much removal that you're just stuck with like not very good cards. where at least like Splinter Twin, they're flash flyers, right? Like your beaters are actually quite good. And you're able to play that tempo game really well. And not to say Ledger Shredder is not good, because Ledger Shredder is great, but like it's different, right? Like if you're stuck with just a Ledger Shredder as your last card in hand, it's not the same as a Pester Knight.
Yeah. It's that one difference in power, and the fact that you don't immediately get that ability, and your opponent can play against it no problem. And so it's
And
bad in top
also
deck wars.
Breach, I think Breach decks only play 2 spell pierce. Like there's no spell pierce. There's very little
There's
interaction.
two in the board often.
There there's very little interaction, and also only 2 3 varies, I think. So your ability to protect yourself, like it's very, very proactive as a deck, which might be like, strange to certain players who aren't used to that. But like, yeah, you need to learn how to be super proactive, and then sometimes you're just going to be stuck in situations where you're like, all I have is a Ragavan in hand or in play. Everything else has my Emery has been exiled. My grinding station has been like leyline binding, and then even if I play Breach, it's not very good right now. And then like your opponent just like slams down a good creature, and then you just lose.
Right. You're like, okay.
So
That's
I
why I
do
was like
like
trying to brew like, how do we make this a control deck, or like how do we make this more tempo-y than it is? But
I do like yeah, I do like the idea of using Underworld Breach of tempo decks because then you're just able to take like like what you're saying with Death Shadow, right? Like the shell of the deck is very good, and then you just add in the Underworld Breach for like that little bit of reach at the end, or just to like close out a game. Sounds kind of good. I would think like, or my question would be if we're trying to play a combo deck that also has like a viable tempo slash slightly aggressive game plan,
Mhm.
I think creativity is also really, really good. Like
Sure.
creativity, you're able to play. You have your dumb little dwarves, which isn't nothing. But you have Fable of the Mirror Breaker, which is just so broken
Yep.
in that deck. It's
Yep.
such a good card in that deck. So you're able to play Fable. You also play like Persist. As like an alternative to like your Archon. If the game goes on, you just slam down Archon with like your fragment of Kiki Jiki. So like there's a lot of different game plans in that deck as well. And then your combo line is also as efficient as Underworld Breach. So they're not necessarily one to one. Like I think Underworld Breach has like a slightly like more consistent tempo plan if you want that.
Yep.
But it's interesting to consider, right? Like if you really want that kind of diverse gameplay, I don't know if like creativity is just like better, because creativity you get to play Leyline Binding, you get to play like a little bit of interaction, and then I don't know, slam down Archon seems good.
Yeah, there's definitely. I mean, I think that's always the most important way to attack modern, right? And that's why like when you talk about the classic best decks in the format, historically, they're almost always game plan deck with game plan A that functions on game plan B that also just auto wins the game if they happen to do C, right? Where it's like Birthing Pod, for example. Game plan A is the Hate Bears deck, right? Like you're playing a bunch of one of creatures that you could use Birthing Pod, or you just find them and they're going to mitigate what your opponent's trying to do just long enough to be able to beat them down with those creatures. Game plan B is the combo. You just happen to put whatever the combo at that, whatever point of history is that, or just chain siege rhinos into play, but put Malira into play, and then they have to kill your Maliras or kill your birthing pod to stop you. And then game plan 3 being, oh right, if I have Gavany Township and Birds of Paradise in play, and I just make these into 5-6 flyers, I don't care that you killed
Yeah,
birthing pod.
yeah. I think decks that have just multiple game plans like that is just like so fun to play.
Yeah. Yeah. And it makes it so that like hate cards are really hard to fight against. Like, how do you sideboard against all three game plans? I would imagine that through the breach, I mean, which I guess is a question, is like, what are the bad matchup? What are the good matchups? Before we get into matchups, good matchup, bad matchups, sideboard game plans, how you modify the deck depending on what people are doing against you, it's time to hit that like and comment button. So we're going to play a game of trivia. The way this works is I'm going to ask Rebel a trivia question. It's going to be very, very ranging in difficulty. It could be hard, could be easy. We're going to find out. But regardless, she's going to him and ha at their best. And in that meantime, y'all need to guess what your answers to the trivia are in the comments below. So please comment your answer. If you get it wrong, when I finally give the answer, or Rebel guesses it or knows it, then you're going to have to hit the like button. If you get it right, high five. You have to hit the subscribe button if you're not subscribed already. But hopefully you already are, so you didn't lose anything.
Subscribe.
It's the perfect deal. It's the perfect deal. All right.
Just subscribe.
Just hit it. Just hit the
Just
subscribe
subscribe.
button.
Just do it.
Just do it. Rebel. This is a trivia question provided by fan of the cast at storm_cauldron. How
Nice
many
name.
legendary Eldrazi have been printed? Cards with the creature type legendary Eldrazi.
Oh, interesting. Huh. Actually, all right. All right. Let's think it out loud while everyone probably slammed down the answer already. We got 3 Eldrazi characters, right? We got Emrakul, we have Ulamog, we got the last Kozilek, then we got them twice. So 3 times 2 would be 6. However, I do think there is one more legendary Eldrazi, the one that Oh wait, It That Betrays, I think, is a legendary. Spawnsire Ulamog, I don't think is a legendary. And is Eldrazi Conscription legendary? Is it legendary creatures or just legendary permanents?
Legendary creature. They're we're asking about legendary creatures.
Let's say 7. Did I big brain myself?
We're so final answer.
Yeah, final answer.
And that is incorrect. You
No.
got I will, just because it's fun to keep guessing. So you got obviously the main 6. That's the easy one. So the answer is there are 8. I will say that the other 2 are tricky, and I'll give you one more chance.
It wasn't It That Betrays.
It That Betrays is not a legendary creature, and neither is a spawn sire spawn.
It has a legendary name. It's a It That Betrays, right? You can't have Thems That Betray. Okay, all right. let's try and figure out what's the other 2. Definitely not Thought Not Seer. I've seen that in multiples.
I will also to give you, even if you want, I can give you more clues or ask for clues.
Yeah.
They both have the exact same mechanic that is not like, it's not like Annihilator. They both have the same specific mechanic.
What? I give up. What is it?
It is Brazilla, Voice of Nightmares, and Hanwire, the Writhing Township.
Oh, yeah, they are legendary Eldrazi. I got tricked.
It is tricky.
I got tricked by the Storm Cauldron.
the meld effect. Now, I would also have allowed 10 as the answer. I think would be a fair one, because there are 2 meld cards that turn into that card. So debatable how many cards they are. But they are, that's those are the 8. All right. So for those that commented incorrectly, hit that like button, and if you got it correct, everyone has to hit the subscribe button. You all are subscribing. Otherwise, you could become a Voice of Nightmares. No one wants that. That is by far the most horrifying Magic story by a long shot. All right, back to Grinding Station and Underworld Breach, and Through the Breach as well. We need to bring Through the Breach decks back. Speaking of Emrakul,
I've lost it Through the Breach before.
That deck is so sick. The blue-white, the Jeskai Control Through the Breach decks that just like got to Emrakul you for free. That also played a lot like Splinter Twin, because your Splinter Twin was the problem. The problem was always that, unlike Splinter Twin had the good half, which was the creature that was a playable card without the combo. With Through the Breach, it's still kind of just like you have to have the 2 cards, and neither of them do anything until you have both of them. In the control decks, in the combo version, the like Goryo's Vengeance, Through the Breach, Grizzlebrand decks, those were sick. I missed that deck. R.I.P. Faithless Looting.
Yeah.
I guess Faithless Looting wouldn't be good to exist with Underworld Breach in the same format. They never exist.
I don't know, because you have Grinding Station and Amber together. I don't think paying a red to like
that's true
loot 2 cards is helping you like stay neutral or positive.
Yeah.
Once you have a Dragon Rage's Channeler and a Grinding Station or Underworld Breach, then it's much easier.
So I guess
is not so.
That's a question. Has DRC been tried over Ragavan, or is just Ragavan pound for pound that much more powerful?
I assume it's just pound for pound much better. I would personally run DRC because I'm cheap.
That's fair. That is a get out of jail, not jail, get out of dollars free card, is that DRC. I mean, there was an argument for a while that DRC is better than Ragavan, just because you can have 2 of them at play at the same time. Like the return on not the return on investment. Multiples are better.
I think for a hot second, or like you might be able to like argue a little bit that DRC Surveil, letting you see more cards, and also eventually growing to be like a flyer, makes it more relevant in like later game states
Mhm.
versus like Ragavan, depending on your matchup. Sometimes it just sits there, right? Like after your initial couple of turns, if you're not able to clear their board, or if they have enough blockers, it just doesn't do much. Which I've experienced a lot of that when I play Breach. However, we all know that if there's a turn one Ragavan and you don't answer it, you just lose that game.
Right, right,
So
right, right. I do think that if you are going to lean into the more aggressive game plan, I would definitely lean, because right now the decks are mostly playing one Lightning Bolt, four Unholy Heat. I would rotate that mix if you wanted to go more into the tempo game plan, which maybe Dragon Rage Channeler does push you towards. So you have the four bolts to get the reach out of it, because that is one thing. Like Unholy Heat doesn't allow you to lock the game out with Underworld Breach the same way Lightning Bolt does. Um,
that's interesting. Yeah, you're able to like feint a grinding state. Like you play a grinding station, have them exile it. Turns out you're just there to pop them for like 6 damage with a breach next turn, and then swing in with like a shredder. Yeah, I could buy that.
yeah, it's an interesting. It's one of the one things looking at it, which I'm assuming part of it is that's what we're about to get into is like what are the bad matchups for the deck and what is it trying not to do. Um, that like some of that is just like Unholy Heat is better at answering things you need to answer to be able to win versus Lightning Bolt, which is just like kind of in some ways leaning too hard into the worst game plan the deck has to offer. Um, but on the other hand, I love a lightning bolt. It's a very versatile card.
Yeah.
Have you heard that it's good?
Well, actually, when I was tuning for like Money Pal, like after Money Pal was, I don't know, when I was tuning Money Pal and like a little bit after Money Pal was gone, there was a while where like we were talking about how good is Lightning Bolt anymore in Modern. Like the fact that we're able to debate how good it is anymore shows how far like it's Modern has progressed as a format in terms of power. Like Lightning Bolt's obviously good, but there is an argument for like you might want Unholy Heats over Lightning Bolts these days because Heat just like takes out any planeswalker basically, which is
Right.
very very relevant.
Getting rid of planeswalkers, getting rid of Ren 6, that like such an important feature, and it's really hard to like but like, yeah, the fact that it doesn't target players, and this might just me be being a boomer modern player, which is something I just currently always exist in, but being able to do that is like really helpful. But like it also like there's just so many X4s in the format now as well that being
Yeah,
able to kill them is like really important. Everything from like Urza to Primeval Titan to, there's just like all this really cool stuff that needing to get rid of is helpful for that. I get it for
I
sure.
I had the same behavior when I was tuning Money Pal, where I was like, "Oh, but Lightning Bolt has to be good, right? It's Lightning Bolt. You can also play then Eternal Witness and Ephemerate Lightning Bolt. And it's like a Snapcaster or whatever." And then it just when I played like more games against the other decks, I was like, "Oh, I don't really want this Lightning Bolt anymore. I need to really kill that construct or whatever."
Yeah, yeah. And now I will say in like the big brain play is that right now the best players in the world might not be using Underworld Breach correctly, and maybe we're just smarter than them. Remember,
Yes,
I started this episode saying that I like being dumb, and I do think they're playing one Lightning Bolt for that reason, right? Like Lightning Bolt does offer a win
hmm
condition. You only need one with Underworld Breach. That is the one piece of it where it maybe is less. You need that many. It's just it feels like you want to be able to do a little bit more of a tempo play with this deck, and that gives you a better chance at that.
yeah. All right, matchups. Let's go.
All
I
right.
don't know the matchup super well. I just know for Underworld Breach when I played it, I got wrecked by decks that just have a lot, a lot of removal. Because I just can't play around it and have to be super aggressive. But I do play blue white control, and I so far haven't really lost to Underworld Breach like ever. I bet Underworld Breach has a pretty good matchup against Murktide though, which is pretty important.
Like I think against the blue red decks, you have Ledger Shredder is just such a big game against them, right? You're able to outdraw with them. They let you just draw so many cards and letting you dig to combos that you need. And then you also have a big flyer just to be in their way. Having a 1/3 to block Ragavan early on, and then that gets bigger to be able to fight Dragon Rage Channeler, that then gets bigger to fight the other big things, and you can use whatever you have to be able to fight stuff like their Murktide Regents. I think like based on what I'm looking at, the one of the harder matchups are actually the Cascade matchups.
Oh
Specifically
yeah,
Living End. Just like Living End is
Living End's good.
such a bad time. Now you have some options, but like getting some of your creatures into the graveyard before they Living End is just not going to be comparable to what they're getting in there.
Yeah,
And
I
really,
can see
really
that.
hurts you.
Most of the time, at least to me, is like Boseiju is like the key answer to Underworld Breach decks, where you just have to like account for it. I know in a lot of the guides for Underworld Breach, they like talk to you, like they talk about, how this is how you play around an endurance,
Mm-hmm.
because endurance is real because people are taking endurance not for you but for other decks.
Yep.
Just so happens that hits you as well. Maybe they're taking for you, but the Boseiju is like the big one because the Boseiju goes under the 3 fairy that you play, like you resolve, and there are a lot of games I've played where I'm like the control deck and I actually had answers for like a lot of the things. But I know for a fact that this person's like, I've played enough Underworld Breach and CDH to see like, all right, this is your slim graveyard. I'm going to wait until you like try to do something. Then I'll pop your Underworld Breach. Then you can't do anything. And now you let it die.
Right.
And then like I'll proceed to take my turn. So like, I think learning how to not get punished by a Boseiju deck is like a very important skill.
I think also like one of the matchups, and that's kind of like on that same game plan, is the Yawgmoth. The Yawgmoth decks are probably maybe its worst matchup, where like they have the most endurances you could ever want. They're playing Force of Vigors, they're playing Besiegers, they're playing, multiple one drop easy answers to prevent Ragavan and your tempo game plan from going through. They're not overly drawing cards or making your or casting spells in a way that turns your ledger. And they have their own version of like, I'm sorry, I won. Good job. But while you're trying to win on an axis that they're good against, they're trying to win on an axis that you're kind of bad against. That seems to me probably like the thing that I would be most afraid of.
Yeah, maybe. I assume you might just like default into like a more tempo role there and just hold on to your unholy heats to like kill. I don't know if it matters against. I actually haven't played against. I've never seen Yawgmoth. Like I've people talk to me about it. I've never ever seen that deck like live. I've seen every other deck but that one.
Sure. I think it's like
But
if
maybe.
it's, I mean, it's the birthing pod variant of the format, right?
Right.
Where like that's the other deck I would be most interested if I was to enter a tournament tomorrow to play. And I probably, if I like had the cards, would maybe play this one over Breach, purely because I haven't played it enough, and it's, as we've discussed multiple times in this podcast, that it's extremely difficult to do well with and to know every play with. Where I feel like Yawgmoth also being difficult in that way, at least is playing on an axis that I'm a lot more familiar with, the basic
Right.
Lyra combo birthing pod experience. Um, just with a beat down young wolf Stranglerootgeist game plan. Um, yeah, it's an interesting. There's a lot of like really cool stuff that you could do. But I guess this is my takeaway with Grinding Station, because I do think we're running out of a little bit of time. I think with Grinding Station and specifically with Underworld Breach, there is a ton that this card can do that is probably being pretty underutilized in the format at the moment.
Yes. Like I can buy into the idea that Underworld Breach, like we're just scratching the surface and there might be like an even better tempo combo deck or just breach deck out there.
I mean, it's like has to be in the top 10 card, not 10 cards. That's hard. It's one of the best, most defining cards of the CDH format in general. And it's
Yes.
like totally legal in modern in a way that like, why aren't more decks playing it if it's able to get so much value so easily? The fact that like any late game environment you're in, it can just as a single card top deck, if you have a lightning bolt or a card draw spell in your graveyard, just can win you the game almost instantly, seems like such an underutilized opportunity for value win condition. And then add the fact that there's a bunch of cards that just like actually it says win the game with if you have them together, like Grinding Station.
Yeah. I don't know if this makes me sound like, I don't know, a radical I don't know, crazy person, but like I can I wonder if Burn should play like one copy of Breach, right? Because we were talking about it earlier. At worst, your Breach is like like a slightly worse volcanic hammer.
Mhm.
It might be like, you play 4 mana that turn to deal 6 damage, which it's not that bad for burn, right? Like one of the issues of burn is that you run out of gas eventually, right?
Right.
And you just don't have card draw because you dedicate every slot to dealing damage, and Underworld Breach is one of those cards that you just like slam down and boom, deal 9 damage for 5 mana.
The deck could also run a Hall of Heliod. It's kind of
It
rough
can.
because you
It
need
actually
double
can.
red, but you also can buy Eidolon of Great Revel with it,
Oh, that's cool.
which is like a
Buy buy
small.
your buy your Hall of Heliots from TCG Player.
Yep.
That's the theme of this episode.
That's the other, yeah. Well, and it's playing white already. Plus, you could just play or like 1 or 2 copies of the 1 mana red enchantment that you can sack to do 2 damage to anything. The spell bomb, but for red, um, to just as a like guaranteed 2 damage every turn late game removal spell with it. I don't know. Hall of Heliod and burn. It's the secret tech, everybody. You're all missing out.
Hall of
And
Heliod and Breach
yeah, and
and
breach.
Burn.
Yeah,
There
you
you
need
go.
both. You need both. It's 3 cards that you add. One of them is a land. You just cut a mountain or something, and then or an arid mesa, and then you just have a good time. Arid mesa is not the thing to cut. Skull. Where's the? Oh, I guess. Oh yeah, they're playing 1 blood. You cut the Bloodstained Mire. That's too it's an ally colored fetch. We've already talked about. You only want enemy color fetches in this format.
Yeah.
Actually, like I don't understand. Are they splashing black? Why are you playing a Bloodstained Mire in this list over just a 4th Arid Mesa? That seems silly.
Well, it's for that surgical extraction.
Maybe. I mean, I guess that's not a thing. But I think in Burn, if I'm playing Burn and my opponent surgical extracts my Arid Mesa, I think I'm pretty happy about that. I think I'm doing a lot of happy dances. My guess is just like it's whatever fetch lands the person who had this list had, and it doesn't matter.
Or it's like the Super 60 brain chess move where you turn 1 crack. You play like a Bloodstained Mire and then like fetch into a Ragavan without showing. Like maybe like you get your Sacred Foundry, and then your opponent will think like, oh, is this some 3 color, 4
Mardu
color list?
grinding
Yeah.
deck, and then you're like, nope, burn.
Nope. You got tricked by the good old Bloodstained Mire. Now
Yep.
take 10.
I mean, sometimes that's how people try and do it. I I always think that like the one that's silly to me is the like make sure every like set symbol is the same of all the cards you're playing of a specific card, because they like might be able to metagame and know how many copies of a certain card you're playing by like remembering. That seems like so much work. I feel like that doesn't.
Yeah, if you're able to dedicate their brain power on the set symbol, I think you're doing pretty good.
Yeah. I'm just like, especially when they're expensive, I just gonna own the cards I have. All right. So, Rebel, anything else you'd like to talk about, Grinding Station or Modern in general, before we start wrapping up?
I think we'll just end on the same thing. Get your Underworld Breaches and your Hall of Heliots on the TCG Player link.
And to be honest, Scalding Tarns and Arid Mesas.
Yeah, all that for sure. Yeah, maybe get those first. Just get a playset anyways.
Just like just buy multiple play sets. All right. Once again, thank you, TCG Player. I'm excited to see what my Underworld Breach through the breach misplay count is. Actually, or just everyone buy through the breaches, and we'll like just like that card for no reason because I can't say cards correctly. And thank you, Rebel, for joining. Where can people find you online once again?
You can find me on YouTube or Twitter. Just make sure you spell Rebel with 2 L's. Very important.
Oh, I recently had to find your channel on an account that wasn't like one of the normal ones I'm logged into, is like a work YouTube account, and I was like looking at for work, and I definitely put Rebel Sun without the 2 L's, and I was like, oh, there's a lot of Confederate flags here.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people have the same experience where they're like, oh, Rebels like that, huh? So I actually had an old video. It's really funny where I targeted the Rebel Sun with 1 L, and the thumbnail is me saying, "Are you looking for magic?" And then it's me singing Country Roads because you might want, country music as well. So I got you there.
Yeah, perfect. It's content for all sides of the coin. All right. So everybody, please go check out Rebel's content there. It's all really great stuff. You have modern gameplay, or not modern, modern gameplay, right? Didn't you do a modern?
I actually do have modern gameplay, yeah.
Yeah, so modern
I'm
gameplay.
gonna have a video where I play a Matt Sperling
Ooh, nice.
modern.
So definitely check that out. There's also Commander gameplay and Commander content. If you haven't hit the like and subscribe button, hit that like and subscribe button.
Do it.
And if you're going to Philly, make sure we'll both be there. Come say hello to us. And in the meantime, comments below, please comment with just what cool Phyrexia all will be won cards, because we're gonna start doing the review episode spectrum once Ben's back, talking about all the sweet cards we're gonna be seeing. All right, thanks everyone. Thank you, Rebel, and we'll talk to all of you next week.
Bye.
This has been a production of Time Traveler Media, sending podcasts into the future.